Hi everyone, this is Darshan Senthil and thanks for joining me again on the second podcast about quadratics. So in this podcast, we're going to go in depth to some of the different types of a different type of quadratics and how to solve it as well. So I'm going to be doing three such videos on three different ways that are most commonly taught and the most that you'll probably see in your Algebra 2 or pre-calculus class. So let's get started. So in this video, to introduce, I'm just going to teach you about standard form. And I'm also going to teach you how to use the quadratic formula. So this is basically an outline of what I'm going to be teaching you today. So first we're going to look at standard form of quadratics, and then we're going to look at the quadratic formula. And I feel these two go well together because you need to know one to know the other. So like for example, you need to know standard form to be able to use the quadratic formula. So I feel that this is handy. This is a handy way to teach it, and I'm going to be sort of grouping form and a way of solving for the future, my future two videos as well. Okay. So today it's standard form and quadratic formula. So let's get started. So standard form is standard. Let's just write that out. Standard form. So standard form, if you remember from linear equations, is ax plus by equals c. This was our linear equation standard form for linear. For quadratics, it's just a little bit different. So you've got y is equal to ax squared plus plus bx again plus c. This is your standard form of quadratic equations. So again, we are not entirely sure what each of these components does, but if you want to know what exactly each of these components does, I'd encourage you to take a calculator and just try graphing the different things and sort of seeing what happens. So once you can try graphing 3x, try manipulating this, then try manipulating this. It's a useful process. It'll help you learn better if you try that yourself. Okay. So let me just give you a little example of what standard form would look like an actual equation. So for example, if you had y is equal to 4x squared plus 3x plus 6, this would be how it would. This would be your, let's see, different color. This would be your A, this would be your B, and this would be your C. Okay, these would be your three coefficients to say, and these are going to be pretty important, so you should know how they work. So again, there's not much more to say about standard form. Just know that this is A, this is B, and this is C, and this is generally what you call standard form. Okay, so that's about it for standard form. Now I'm going to talk about quadratic formula. Let's just write that out first. Formula. Now when you have to solve quadratic equations, quadratic formula is probably the most reliable way and most straightforward way to solve it. There are easier ways to solve quadratic equations, but sometimes they won't work. So quadratic formula is the most straightforward, reliable way. So no matter what your quadratic is, you should be able to use quadratic. You should be able to use this and solve it pretty simply, pretty easily. It's just a lot of plugging in and a bit of work. So let me just show you what the quadratic formula is. I'm going to do it in a different color. So it goes as follows. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is your quadratic formula. You should probably memorize it because you'll be asked for this on lots of tests and quizzes. If I know teachers, they'll always ask you to use this somewhere or the other. And in general, if you just memorize it, it's a lot easier to. You'll find life a lot easier. So you can just like apply it much more quickly. You can save some time in the long run. Okay. So yeah, make sure you know that well. And now you may look at all these B's and A's and C's and you'll be like, what the skadooey is that? So let's just rewrite our standard form equation. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And if you look at that, what do we have here? A, B, and C. So these are quite simply what you're gonna be using in this quadratic equation. Okay, this quadratic formula. And just to touch on one more thing, quadratic formula is used for finding what we called, what you call the zeros of an equation. So that's a pretty important term you should know if you didn't know it already. So the zeros of the equation are also known as x-intercepts. I think I talked about what x-intercepts are in linear equations, so you should probably know what they are. X-intercepts and zeros. Well, what else? Yeah, that's about it. So x-intercepts and zeros are. This is basically what this gives you. So in case you want me to recap, zeros are basically what x is when what x is when y is equal to 0. So what does that tell you about this equation? In order to be able to use quadratic formula on this kind of an equation, you need to set y as 0. Okay, so if you want to use quadratic formula, make sure you set your equation to 0 and then you're good to go. Okay, and yeah, that's about it. So throughout quadratics, most of the ways of solving we'll be using are based on finding zeros. That's probably the most convenient way to do it, and I'll show you more ways you can do that in future videos, not just related to quadratics, but also I'll show you how to find them in your calculator and various stuff like that in the near future. Okay, so here's just a little practice problem in case you wanted to see me work out some stuff. So I'm just going to go over the various steps you need to use to sort of use the quadratic formula, so that once you watch this, you'll be able to do it on your own as well. So yep, let's get started. So first, what do you notice? We've got it equal to -6. If you remember, we want it to be equal to 0. So the first thing we need to do is add 6 to both sides. In short, we are setting equation to 0. Okay, so once we add 6 to both sides, we will end up with 3x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, because these two will cancel out. Then what we want to do is we want to identify our a, b, and c. So let's just write that down. We want to identify our a, b, and our c. So in this case, just gonna write it on the side. A is our first coefficient, that's gonna be equal to 3. Our b, our second coefficient, is gonna be equal to 4. And our c, which is our last coefficient, is gonna be equal to -3. Watch out for the sign, okay? It's gonna be -3. So once we have this, we can plug him into our quadratic equation. Plug into quadratic formula. Okay, so we would just need, let's just write out the quadratic formula. B squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's just start plugging in our numbers here. So I'm just going to use this equation right here. I'm just going to plug in the stuff. So negative 4 plus or minus take out the b, we get 4 squared minus 4, we raise the AC, we get 3 negative 3. That's all over 2 times a, which will be 3. Okay, so we just plug this stuff in. So you could like enter this in your calculator right away, but sometimes you might probably make a mistake. So I would advise you to try and simplify it as much as you can by hand first, and then you could probably input it into your calculator. Okay. So here we go. So let's just try and simplify this over here. So we can make this negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared is 16 minus 4 times a times c. Let's just use my calculator here to solve that. 4 times, what's a, 3 times negative 3, it's going to be negative 36. So minus, be careful here, it's negative 36. You're subtracting negative 36. So theoretically you're going to be adding. So just make sure you just sort of, you work step by step. Don't try to do things too fast, otherwise you're going to make mistakes. Okay, all over 2 times 3, which is going to be 6. Okay, so we've got this far. Now let's just take the simplifying process another step further. So negative 4 plus or minus 16 plus because it's minus 36 is going to be 52. Square root of 52 over 6. Now this looks like a final answer, but we can actually simplify it a lot further. So I'm just going to write our final step here. Oopsie daisies. Which is going to be simplify. Okay. So we can simplify this down into, let's just split this apart so we can work with it a lot easier. So negative 4 over 6 plus or minus square root of 52 over 6. Now can we simplify square root of 52? Actually we can break this down into square root of 4 times square root of 13. And square root of 4 is just simply 2. So this would turn into 2 root 13 over 6. Okay. Now let's just put this all together. I'm just going to stray a little bit into over here. So let's put this all together now. Negative 4 over 6 plus or minus 2 root 13 over 6. Now can we break this down even further? Yes, we can. This becomes negative 2/3 plus or minus. These two cancel out. So you get 1/3. So root 13 over 3. And this will be your final answer. You can combine these terms, whatever. So, but this will be your final answer. Okay, negative 2/3 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 3. It's not a very nice answer, but it's a good answer. So you if you wanted to like verify an answer, you could plug this equation into your calculator and find the zeros in your TI graphing calculator, and find the zeros of the function, and then plug this in, but it's going to give you a decimal when you plug this, when you find the zeros of this. So what you could do after that is you could input this equation into your calculator, like actually write this thing out and see what decimal it gives you for that, and then see whether your answers match. Okay, and also just keep in mind that because you have a plus or minus here, you've got two answers. So let me just write that out. You've got two answers. Okay, now often it's a good time to check, but I'm pretty sure that both of these work. So yep, I'm just gonna end the video on this note. So also just remember, this is just our outline in a nutshell. So again, it's pretty simple, the quadratic formulas, because it's just plugging in, but you need to make sure that you do this systematically, like do it neatly, and make sure you don't make silly mistakes. Because a lot of the time when I was doing quadratic formula, the only problem I ever encountered was making stupid mistakes. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. I will do some more videos in the near future. See ya.